Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Camelia here, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have for you a new sewing pattern review, or I want to talk a little bit about the two new blouses that I made with the latest PDF release from Sew Over It. First of all, if you are not a subscriber to my channel, please consider subscribing. It will really help me grow my channel, and like that I know that people like my content and you like to see what I'm making, so I do get the impulse to make more interesting videos and more content on the channel, so thank you for that. But today I want to talk about the Lilian blouse, the latest pattern, PDF pattern from Sew Over It, and I made both versions of the pattern, the view one of option 1, which has bust fisheye darts sewn in the front and also in the back, and the version 2 has in version 2 the fisheye darts are not, the long darts in the front and in the back are left unsewn, so you get a more loose fitting garment. I am a pattern insider for Sew Over It, so as a pattern insider together with other ladies we get the patterns that are to be released, we get them a little bit up front, and we get to make them, so when the pattern is released you get to see the pattern in a variety of fabrics and a variety of bodies, so you get a better idea. In the Lilian blouse there are also 3 lines for the sleeves, a short sleeve, 3/4 length and a long sleeve, and the long sleeve gets also a little cuff, and I'm going to talk in a moment about that. Of course, I think the main point of interest in this blouse is the cute color here that is going all the way to the back. You can see it in this version here too also. It has a really interesting construction method. It is actually really easy to make, but you need to follow a bit the instructions to sew the color in the correct way. In the front there are buttons and buttonholes. I chose to make horizontal buttonholes, but in the pattern there are vertical buttonholes. It's just a preference of mine. So also they advise, and I think it's the best fabrics for this pattern will be, this is a really soft rayon, but this one, and I was really curious to see how it will work in something else than a drapey rayon. This is a cotton, and this one is from Minerva. It's left over from a dress that I made for Lisa, for my daughter, and I took care to cut that one because it was a small garment, to cut it in such a way that I'll be left over with enough fabric to make something else, and it was just enough to make this blouse. But this one is a cotton, and I think I can compare it with a really light denim. It's not thick, but it's definitely not drapey as the advised fabrics, but it works. I think it was really nicely. But in a cotton like this, that it has no drape, I think the best way to go is to make the fisheye darts to get a little bit of definition, otherwise it would be like a box. But even in this one, also here the darts are not sewn, and you see pictures. I'll see where I can put them. There is a little bit of definition in the bodice. As you can see here, it's not cut straight down, but you have a little bit of waist definition. And I have here some other fabrics that I picked from my stash here in the sewing room. This is, for example, this is a cotton. This is a poplin. It's really soft. I think this one will make a really nice version. This one is a challis from Minerva, but this one is interfaced, and I picked up this piece because I want to talk a little bit about the interfacing. This is the same the same light cotton that I used, a cotton satin, a light one that I used for my Pussy Bow blouse, also from Sew Over It. I'll put a picture here. And this one, actually the planning was to make the blouse in this fabric, but I was not sure how I'm going to look with all these cats turning around here at the collar. This is a challis from Minerva. and it's going to become something else. But this one, the challis from Minerva, the exclusive ones that they have, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous fabric to use for view B or 2, view 2, I think they call it, the very drapey one without the darts. The changes that I made in the pattern, I based them a little bit on the changes I made for most of the Sew Over It patterns. I'm making almost every time the same changes. First of all, I raised the point of my dart. You can see it here. I think it's by 1.5 centimeter. And something that I always do when I'm raising, of course, you should do that if you need to raise your bust point dart, then I need to true my dart, and you can see by truing the legs I do get a little bit room added here, and to true that I move only the point, I lift it by 1.5 or what is needed, and then I'm going from the leg of the dart to the point, and from the other leg to the point, not from the seam allowance but exactly from the leg where the seam allowance or the stitching line is. And after I'm doing that, I'm just folding the dart, putting the bulk. That's why it's important to know how the designer wants you to have the dart folded, because the bulk of the dart is trued on that way. So I'm folding the pattern as I will have my dart sewn, and then I with the bulk down, because this is the way I'm pressing my bust darts in my garments, and then I'm just cutting, and then I get the true dart bulk here. So that was for the front, the change. I made my usual size 12. This is the nice color that is getting folded. I made my usual size 12, and normally I blend back to a 10 from at the waist and down to the hip, but in this case I just used the 12 because I knew that here I will have it will be a loose garment, and in this one I had the darts to, I don't know, to adjust if it was necessary. And even then the side seams are finished separately, so I could even make it a little bit more on my body. For the back I made, and this is something hanging here. For the back I did my usual sway back adjustment. My usual, I should not say usual because I think in the Pipa dress I did not make a sway back adjustment, but in this one I made one. And as you can see, I made the sway back adjustment, and then I trued the fisheye dart back. I draw the middle line from the lower part of the dart, which stayed in place because I'm using the straight of the grain perpendicular to the hem. The middle of the dart up a little bit at the point where it was, and then from there put the legs back. As you can see here, you'll think, well, that's not anymore on the fold, but I could add some paper and make it straight. I just put it against the fold of the fabric and cut it on the fold. Although on my body, garments cut on the fold on the back, they are never working, and also in this one I do have the feeling that it's not sitting really nice, but it's comfortable and it's okay. I mean, I'm not making myself too busy about it. Something else that I changed was to take 2 centimeters away from off from the so a narrow shoulder adjustment. I really wanted to have the shoulder point of the garment to sit exactly on my shoulder point and not being dropped. I don't like that. I don't really like dropped shoulder garments unless they are very dropped and it's obvious, but only a little bit here is not really my style. So took 2 centimeters off. Usually I'm making that slash method, you know, where you slash in the middle of the shoulder and you go down to the armhole, and then you keep exactly the same armhole shape. Well, I was lazy and I just chopped off 2 centimeters from here. Of course, I did the same in the front and blended as much as possible nicely in the armhole. What is important if you do that, although I do advise to do it the correct way, if you do that, you always need to check the length of or the length. You always need to check the the cap sleeve length, because depending on the adjustment that you make, if you are making a narrow shoulder adjustment and you go much here, you have a longer armhole, and if you make a broad shoulder adjustment, you have a shorter armhole. So you need always to check the amount of ease that you have, or the length of the cap sleeve, in order to be sure that it's going to fit in the new armhole after the shoulder adjustment. So those were the only changes, pretty standard changes for me. I made this one. This was the first one that I made, and it was originally it was supposed to be with a long sleeve, but the pattern has a little cuff for the long sleeve. But I found that because this cotton is really not drapey, and this is also not stiff, but it's definitely not so drapey as a rayon, it was really not sitting nicely in that cuff. And the mistake that I made was, originally the sleeve was a little bit too long on me, so it was exactly the right length, but with adding the cuff it was too long, so I chopped off what was too long, and then I really needed to put that cuff, or otherwise make it shorter. So I decided to make the sleeve a little bit shorter. This is I don't know if this is the length, the 3/4 length, or this is the 3/4 length that is in the pattern. But on this one, because I really wanted a little bit of volume in this little cuff that they give, I just put the sleeve on the fabric, added I think 4 centimeters on either side, left and right, added 4 centimeters, and then a little bit from blended back here to the 4 centimeters added, and that gave a little bit of extra volume in the sleeve, and I think it's really cute now. You can see it in the pictures. Something else that I want to say is that, and that's why I had that little piece, I don't know if you ever heard, maybe you did, about block fusing. And in this case there is the little collar. Actually you get a piece for the upper collar and for the under collar, and the top color is getting interfaced. In this one I interfaced even the under color. I don't know why, but mostly I do that, so it was a reflex. This fabric is really not necessary. But something that I do when I work with this kind of very soft fabrics, I do block interfacing, but by that I mean I have a piece of fabric. I do make a test. I place the pattern pieces on the fabric to see if it's enough fabric to cut those pattern pieces. So like in this case is the little facing with the cotton collar, and the collar pieces, I put them on the grain to see if they are going to fit, and then I cut that piece of fabric. I cut also the same amount of interfacing. I'm interfacing the whole piece of fabric, and when I say the whole, you can imagine it's not a big deal, because mostly you have only small pieces. And then I get a big piece of interfacing, and I'm folding it again and cut all my pieces. The thing is that if you are block interfacing, you have lesser chance on getting shrinkage in your interfaced pieces, because the fabric is already interfaced, so nothing is going to shrink. And I know there are people that are saying good interfacing is not shrinking. Well, in my case I used a lot of kind of interfacings, and most of them are always shrinking. Some a little bit more, some a little bit less, but they are shrinking. And to be sure that the interface pieces are the same size as they must be in the pattern, I think block fusing is the way to go. You do use a little bit more interfacing, but otherwise anyway you get a lot of small pieces that you cannot do anything with them. So sometimes when working with or at least when working with this kind of really soft fabrics, I do block interface. In this one, because it's a really stable cotton, I didn't. What I do when I'm not block interfacing, I am cutting the interfacing pieces following the pattern. I'm placing them on my ironing board with the glue part up, and then with my iron I give them a really good steam. Of course, not pressing on the interfacing because it's going to stick on my iron, but a few centimeters away from the interfacing, a really good steam all over, and then you actually sometimes you can see how the interfacing is getting a little bit, is shrinking a little bit, and then I can use that interfacing to put it on the fabric, on the pieces that I already cut from the fabric, and fuse them. And also that is a way to avoid shrinkage because of the interfacing. The last thing that I want to share with you is yesterday evening I just finished this one, and I was making my buttonholes, and because this fabric is a little bit see-through, I didn't want to add interfacing on the front piece of the garment. In this one I have interfaced the facing, and I also added a little bit of interfacing on the bodice part. You cannot see, of course, but to be sure that I'll on the here in this area where the buttonholes are coming. But in this one, because it's pretty sheer, I was afraid that if I'm going to put interfacing, it's going to be visible. So to avoid that, I have in this one I have only the interfacing on the facing part. And I made my first buttonhole, and I noticed that it was starting to pull a little bit. So to avoid that, I used a piece of water-soluble interfacing. And now, because I bought a lot of stuff for the embroidery machine, I have this kind of stuff in my stash. So a little bit of water-soluble interfacing, and as you can see, it's tearing really easy from the sewn buttonhole. So I reused this piece, just moving a little bit around from where the previous buttonhole was, and it worked really nice. You can tear it off the garment, and you do have a little bit of interfacing in the here in the middle of the buttonhole, but when you cut it, it's really not a problem. So water soluble interfacing as a stabilizer for sewing buttonholes. So a lot of talking. So this was my my video for the Lilian blouse. A really nice blouse. I'm really happy with the fit, and I'm happy that I know my fit is Over It patterns, and that's the great thing. If you are sewing with a lot with one pattern company, you know your fit in it, and most of the time you need to make all the time the same changes, the same fit changes. I'm not talking about style changes like adding a little bit room in a sleeve because you want to have it wider, but the fitting changes, they will be almost always the same because the same company is going to use the same block always. So this was it. I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope you like my Lilian blouses. I'm going to put some pictures here and there. Don't forget to like the video, and don't forget to subscribe for future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.